Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners meeting. We are about to begin, and Commissioner Barnett, would you do us the honor of doing the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
Thank you, Mayor.
Very good.
If you would all please rise and remove your caps. We ask you, God, to bless this meeting of people who earnestly desire to do their work in the best possible way, to benefit those we serve, and to leave our children a better world. Please give us the wisdom and vision to plan adequately and act correctly to achieve these ends. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and we could have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Baxter? Here. Commissioner Bernard?
Here.
Vice Mayor Marino?
Here.
Mayor Sachs?
Here.
Commissioner Weiss?
Here.
Commissioner Woodward? Here.
We have a quorum. Very good. We're going to start. And if you could, if you have your agenda in front of you, we could start with the regular agenda. Number 3,
Approve the agenda.
A1.
Do A1.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Pardon me?
You need
May I
to
be
approve
recognized?
the agenda.
Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications, Madam Baker?
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, no additions, deletions, or substitutions.
Very good. Thank you very much. We're going to, then we could have an adoption of the agenda as noted. All those, if we could have a first by Commissioner Barnett, a second by Commissioner Woodward. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously, 7-0. Now we're ready to move on to the regular agenda, which is found on page 2. Okay, 3A1. Staff recommends a motion to receive and file on the warrant list. And we have that backup information, if anybody needs it, that can be viewed in the clerk and comptroller's office. Shall we go ahead and proceed on 3A1?
Madam Mayor, motion to approve item 3A1 and 2.
Very good. And that is a first by Commissioner Bernard, a second by Commissioner Baxter. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes 7-0. Moving right along to 3A2, and this is where staff recommends a motion to review for sufficiency the report of the county official bonds, and B, to receive and file the report of the county officials bonds dated January 2024. Anybody have any questions or comments? If not, we're going to proceed to a vote.
Madam Mayor, I think we've already voted on, I made, the motion was for 3A1 and 2, so I did include that in my first motion.
Very good, thank you. And that is good. So we're going to move right on to 3B1. And will the clerk note that that was 7-0 at that last vote? On to the county attorney. Now, staff recommends a motion to approve. And I wonder if we have any questions or comments? County attorney, would you like to say anything about that?
No, this is just an agreement that we had established with the city and the Photographic Center some years ago, and approximately, it was originally a 30-year agreement. 15 years of the agreement have expired. Some differences arose between the city and the Photographic Center, and it was in everyone's best interest to go ahead and terminate this agreement. Because they fulfilled 50% of the agreement, we felt it appropriate that someone should repay us 50% of the money that would otherwise have been paid to them during the remaining term of the agreement. So we went ahead and did this termination agreement. And the city has some differences with the Photographic Center, and they cannot settle those differences unless we go ahead and resolve our outstanding loan agreement. Well, it's not a loan agreement, grant agreement with the Photographic Center.
Very good, thank you. And I see that Commissioner Weiss would like to state something.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to move item 3B1 for approval.
Very good. And do we have a second? We have a second by Commissioner Woodward. All those, are there any other comments? If not, all those for. Anybody opposed? See that it passes 7-0 unanimously. And going on to the last item on the regular agenda is 3C1. And staff is requesting board direction regarding the appraisal process for contractual staff. Does anybody wish to state anything on this before we move to a vote?
Actually,
See none? Oh, Vice Mayor Marino.
thank you. So just a question, please. The appraisals that you have attached to this,
Let's wait till the staff comes forward. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Who's going to be speaking on behalf of the staff for this question?
Reggie Duran, Assistant County Administrator. I'm joined at the table by Wayne Condry, Human Resources Director, Maria Figueroa, Assistant Director, as well as David Oddie, County Attorney.
could you pull your
Who would-
microphone?
And we're going to need to hear you a little bit, Chief, there. I always call you
Yes.
Chief. Who's going to be responding on behalf of staff to the question by the Vice Mayor?
I will.
Sir, go ahead.
Actually, can we get a staff presentation?
That would be great. Why don't you go right ahead and do that?
All right.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Open the chief, or you want me to go ahead and do the presentation?
Members of the board, Mayor, Vice Mayor, County Administrator Baker, if you recall, back on December 19th, the board asked for county administration to bring back before the board appraisal processes for the positions of the county administrator, the county attorney, and the internal auditor. So with that, staff has gone and reviewed from various agencies, both county and municipal agencies, as well as others, how they conducted their appraisals, and also did a review of what this government has done in the past here in Palm Beach County. And we also met with each of the county administrators to address any specific concerns that they may have. So with that, Mr. Condry is prepared to present what we have prepared for the board.
Good, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Duran, and good morning, Commissioners. That's just a summation.
Sir, if you could just speak right in the
Oh, certainly,
microphone, because
certainly.
it's being recorded.
That is a summation of what the administrators already covered, so we can skip that slide, please. Next slide. We reviewed existing resources available in the county. For example, there was a last year's selection process for the internal auditor. We gathered information from that process to use in developing the performance evaluation for that position. We used some information from the selection process for the county administrator. Next slide, please. Additionally, we made contact with several entities, ones we typically use for comparison for employment purposes, some that were specifically asked for us to check by the board themselves, and some that are just industry standards. Examples are the International City Manager Association, FCC-MA, which is the Florida City County Managers Association, Orange County, Hillsborough County, the School District of Palm Beach County. Next, please. So any time we make a recommendation, we like to give the board some options and direction to take. Obviously, the first option is to keep the status quo, which is the annual performance review that the contractual staff currently provide the board as a status of what they've done over the past rating period, their goals and accomplishments. Option number 2 would be to keep that same process in place, but however formalize it to that it would be a board agenda item. The contractual employee would present in front of the board their goals and accomplishments over the past rating period. The board would have an interactive evaluation process and then provide goals and objectives for that contract employee for the next rating period. Third proposal, of course, is to adopt a new performance appraisal instrument and process.
we can't read that.
And to that extent, we have draft performance evaluations for all 3 of your contract employees. With any written performance evaluation system, you have to have a benchmark for performance. How do you rate each one of these factors under consideration? What you see here is our benchmarks for performance so that you know what performance should be expected. The position incumbent knows what performance is expected of them. There are 5 categories here. And I'll only do the first couple here just to give you a flavor for what this means. Number 5 is excellent, and that would be the incumbent consistently demonstrates performance at a very high standard that significantly surpasses reasonable expectations. A rating of 3 in that particular category would be that the incumbent consistently meets reasonable performance expectations. The individual demonstrates an acceptable degree of competence and performance. And of course, at the lowest end of the spectrum is unsatisfactory, and that means the incumbent frequently fails to meet minimum performance standards. Next, please. There are 5 job dimensions or core competencies that is the same across all of these executive positions. The first one is teamwork. And in that, there are job factors below that category. Team management and management reporting. I can cover this briefly and go into more detail depending upon how the board wants that to be addressed. But under teamwork skills, for example, team management, that first factor says the ability, willingness to understand the overall needs and priorities of entire county government and community at large, constructively contributes in administrative decision-making that affects the entire county, maintains a proper perspective on their role and is sensitive to competing needs of this board, worked effectively and positively with all members of the management team. So that's just one example. That's team management. And there's another category under that for management reporting. The second job dimension is communication skills. That covers public communication, internal communication, administrative and legislative communication. The next category is problem-solving skills. Covers innovation, analysis, decision-making and judgment, and implementation of programs. The next category is management skills. It covers planning and organization, financial management, emotional intelligence, and personal management. Last category is leadership skills. It covers human resources management, results orientation, initiative, professionalism, and ethics. Now, there's a couple of changes that are different between the county administrator's evaluation and the county attorney and the internal auditor. And I'll go over that briefly. For the internal auditor, too much paper here. For the internal auditor, we have what we call internal audit representation. That includes planning and organizing, risk assessment, implementation, audits, audit program delivery, and special projects. And for the county attorney, we have a section for legal representation. And it covers approach, neutrality and fairness, representation, cost forecasting, and anticipating legal needs. And for all of these evaluations, at the very end, there's a section for goals and objectives. Now, we only listed 3 on the form itself, but how many goals and objectives are set, that's at the discretion of the board. And that's for each one of these individuals. So, next slide, please. How would this process work? It's up to the board to decide when that annual evaluation is done. And checking the other sources for information, they do it a variety of different ways. Some people do it on the anniversary date of the hire for that individual. All three of your current contract employees are county employees who were promoted into those positions, so they were internal, so they have a hire date. You could set the evaluation based upon their hire date. Of course, in some jurisdictions, these evaluations are done based upon the fiscal year. So you can set it around the fiscal year or the budget process if you prefer. And again, some people do it around the renewal timeframe for contracts, and you may do that. That's 100% the board's direction and discretion and how that's done. But in terms of a timeline, 60 days prior to the date of evaluation, whatever that date may be, Human Resources would notify the contracted employee and the board that the evaluation is due. At the time of that notification, the board would get, each individual board member would get a evaluation form for that employee, as well as the employee getting an evaluation form themselves. The process starts with the employee doing their own self-evaluation, how they believe they performed during the course of that rating period. That information is then given to the board, and the board does their evaluation of that employee. And it's at the board's discretion whether each individual board member would like to meet with that contract employee. That's strictly up to the board's discretion to do so. But once that process is done, those forms are returned to HR. We then compile those into one aggregate rating for that employee. So that takes everybody's input and provides one aggregate rating for that employee. That is then brought before the board in a regular workshop or regular board meeting to be discussed, and the board to provide their feedback as a board for the employee, and then you set whatever goals and objectives you have for the next rating period at that time. We, based upon information we received during the course of our walkarounds with the board, it looks like the board wanted to do this, start this process in April. If that's the case, given the proposed timeline, we would need to be getting that process started fairly quickly. Next slide. So, as a recap, status quo, current set of circumstances. Option 2, current status quo, but board formal meeting agenda item with the position incumbent in front of the board talking about the objectives over the past year, their accomplishments, et cetera. The board doing the evaluation and rating for that employee during the course of that hearing, and then, of course, setting goals and objectives for the next rating period. And option 3, obviously, is the new process with the form we just discussed. So that concludes our presentation, and we're open to any questions.
Very good. I think Vice Mayor Marino, you were the first to ask a question.
I was the first. Thank you. This is not an easy thing to do. I spent the whole weekend on the Florida Association of Counties website, pulled up countless performance reviews from other counties around the state. Some are a little bit more, have more questions than what you have here. And I don't know what the board's position is right now. This is a first go at what you think the form should look like. I think the rest of the board, now that we have this documentation, can look at it and say, this is what we want to add, this is what we want to subtract, in the way of the questions. As for the procedure, I will look to my other commissioners to find out if they want to do option 1, 2, or 3. But I think we could I think we can add a couple more questions. I think it's a little broad, but that will also be up to the rest of the board with what their comments are on that. And I know it was very hard to find an appraisal form for an internal auditor.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I had to get it from a school board in Kansas, I think it was where it came from. Because most of us really don't even understand what the internal auditor does. We know his job is important, obviously, because we hire him. But the actual, day-to-day and what they do, and he's only been on the job in his position for
Months.
I don't think an appraisal of him at this point in time is probably maybe the anniversary of his year or something would be better. But these are just some comments, and I'm sure there's other comments from my commissioner, so I'll look forward to hearing those. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. You know, in looking at your performance appraisal sample, in looking at team management, how would you recommend that we would acquire that information to be able to rate and make some kind of an objective?
Under management reporting,
Yeah, team management. How would we know, because we don't deal, I mean, we're not involved in the direct day-to-day activities or that are going on between the administration and their team. Is there another tool that could be provided to assist in being able to do that?
Well,
Or is
some
it a
of this-
realistic thing for us even to do if we don't have it?
well, some of this, it really depends on, and there's portions of this, I think that's applicable, means a proper perspective on the role and sensitive competing needs of the board. Well, I think that goes without saying, with 7 people, you're going to have competing needs. So that's certainly something that could be done. Some of this, I understand, really depends upon each individual commissioner's experience with that particular contract employee. For example, as been pointed out, you probably have very limited real-time regular contact with the internal auditor. Some of you probably talk to the county administrator every day or every other day, and some of you probably talk to the county attorney, you know, in a similar type of time frame. So yes, some of this is going to be that you're going to have not as much contact with that individual for a period of time. And in those cases, maybe we would score this as not applicable, or you don't have any knowledge regarding that particular event or set of circumstances. Because that's going to vary from person to person based upon your personal contact with that individual.
No, I understand that, sir. My question was in regards to if you're going to evaluate somebody on how they're managing their team, if part of this is to manage that or to score them on that, would then we go out and then ask their team to rank? I don't know how we'd get that information.
Well, if you're looking for 360, which is, again, part of this process, that could be possible. But a lot of that comes from, how should I put this?
I don't mean to cut you off, but I think you're going in a different direction than where the question I'm asking. I think I'm trying to be really specific. On here, you've got an example of, and so I guess maybe I'd do it this way rather than ask you the question. Unless there's a mechanism for being able to gather that information, I don't know how I could support scoring somebody or evaluating somebody on how they manage their team unless I have some way of getting direct knowledge about it. So I'll just leave it at that and leave it as a comment. Thank you. And I'll share that with the board.
Commissioner Weiss, if I could, before I recognize Commissioner Baxter, I think one of the ways that we can review that particular question is if we request information, let's say, from the county attorney, and the county attorney is able to give us another attorney or nominate another attorney in her office who works with her on that specific issue. I think that that helps us. Now, some positions are not so easily available, as you had mentioned, sir. But there are some positions, contract positions in the county where we ask them for help or ask them a question or ask them for their justification, and that person, that director, will be able to give us somebody else in their office who could be of direct assistance. That may be a county attorney, and there are some, like the internal auditor, where it would not be so not be so obvious, and then we just score that appropriately, which is we don't know. So I think that certainly helps. And Commissioner Baxter, you've had your light on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a few things I had noticed missing from the performance appraisal instrument, and we had pretty extensive conversations, and I feel maybe half was covered in this. But I would say there was one that really sticks out to me that I think is missed overall, and probably one of the most important, and it's our residents. This doesn't evaluate, do our residents overall seem that they're heard? That they're validated and that we are taking them serious. And because us, the board, cannot give anybody else direction other than the administrator, the attorney, or the auditor, then I think that falls upon them. I don't know that I have seen in place a sort of survey of sorts from residents, that maybe that could be a way to get feedback. And then have those comments, data, are they happy, are they not happy, provided to us? Were their problems resolved? Did they feel that staff was helpful? So I think that could really help us to determine the management part of this.
Certainly, and some of these things too could be part of goals and objectives you set on an annual basis for that particular incumbent, depending upon what that focus may be for the board at that particular time. But I understand your input on that. We're working with a very tight timeline to get something in front of you in 30 days. So, yeah, but I understand that and respect that comment.
Mayor, if I may.
Go right ahead.
So when, years ago now, when the DMV was in Royal Palm, they always had this little, it was almost like an iPad type station. And they always encouraged people, please fill out the survey, please tell us how your experience was. I mean, if we could have that, especially in our building department, would be hugely helpful. And to be, they don't have to go through staff, they don't have to go through anyone, just a computer there. And we even have this amazing new app, PBC Connect, that we might be able to get some feedback on as well. I think that would help us determine the management part of this very well, and to move us in the direction of supporting our residents, our constituents, and putting them first.
Understand.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Baxter. You're done. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to go back to Commissioner Weiss's concerns about the teamwork. And as I understand it, I think for us as a board moving forward, we're not necessarily judging or appraising the positions and how they work with their staff as much as how the relationship with the staff interacts with us, and how, if it's the administrator bringing department heads to meet with us, those types of relationships. And I think that that's more of the appraisal that we should be looking at, on how those are brought to us, how we fill in those meetings, how those meetings go before we have workshops like this, before we have agenda items. And that, not so much how it's managed, but how those departments communicate with us through the administrator or the attorney, and rarely the auditor, because I think we see you twice a year. But so if we could word it in a way that we're not necessarily judging the interaction within the department, but how those departments interact with us as a board.
Gotcha.
So would that be more sufficient for?
I think that makes sense.
For this?
Yes.
Okay.
We can do that.
That makes sense. Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. As I see this as the first bite of the apple today, you're giving us some samples. I'm happy to share with the rest of the board some of these evaluations that really do have different questions under the topic. This way, it's not just so broad, it can be zeroed down a little bit. I do want to remind the board, we do have a non-interference clause in our charter, and sadly, I read the 20 county charters for our state this weekend. I was bored because I wanted to be able to really understand what other charter counties do, and how they compare with Palm Beach County. And that was something that was in, I think, all but 2 of the charters was the non-interference clause. So while we would we only have the ability to hire and fire 3 people. We do not have the ability to go to a department head and tell them what to do. We can ask for information. And I think what we're all searching for here is that information that comes to us, making sure that it comes to us in an unfiltered fashion. We don't want it skewed one direction or another direction because of what staff or the public may see. We need to know. We need to just know all sides of the story, not just one. As for a timeline, I would rather we do this in a complete and efficient manner than in a rushed, incomplete manner. So if our timeline is to move it out a little bit further than April, I'm okay with that because we're putting a lot out here right now. We're asking for a lot of information, and I think we need to do it in the best, most concise manner possible. So while I look at the samples of the draft, it's obvious from some of the questions here that there's more information that the board is looking for. So I think that we as a board, I'm happy to make copies of all of these appraisals, yes, that I have, so that we know what other counties are looking for, not as a comparison to us, but something we may not have thought of.
Certainly.
I appreciate that, Vice Mayor. And if we could have staff copy what Vice Mayor Marino is talking about, we can all have a copy of that and review it as we look through this proposal. And I think we have Commissioner Baxter and then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor. To Commissioner Woodward's point, I absolutely agree. I do think, staff's interaction with us as a board is very important. So I would love to make that its own section, if possible. To the point of that I was making earlier about resident satisfaction, I think that would serve a whole nother section instead of being all together or in one or the other. I think it makes another section of the appraisal for us to evaluate. And then being up here, I love information, but I feel like we suffer from death by analysis sometimes. And I think April, I don't think whether this is June, August, December, we're going to perfect this. But I do think maybe going through this, keeping on a timeline, will help us to then, as we go through it, discover those things we might want to improve on. Sometimes the best way to do it is just do it and then figure out, I like this, I don't like that. I do agree, this is the 11th hour. I do agree it is, we have a couple months before April. And so I just think that that's how we're going to probably get through this the best way and learn and pick up things. I will actually leave it to my board to decide how they would like to approach it. I just don't want us to get so in the minutia of every little detail that, then we do the process and then we find that we don't like some part of it. But that's just me. And then lastly, I did have one thing, but I think it was already covered, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank staff for bringing this to us. There are 3 options, and I don't support option 1 or 2. I believe that option 3 would be the better way for us to proceed. And I think that we still have to kind of work on the final performance analysis and how we would do that. So, for me, I would prefer that if we can get some of these, all these documents from Vice Mayor Marino, and then we can decide maybe in the February workshop, and to really finalize the process that we would use as a performance analysis. And then what I would prefer, if we adopted, let's say at the February meeting, since we do have contractual employees, I think that we would need to almost give a time frame to kind of like, let's say we approve it in February, then I would probably say I'd prefer we give them like a 6-month period so they can operate under that new performance analysis, the performance that we're providing. And then let's say it's 6 months, and then maybe sometimes, I don't know, July, August, whatever date that we decide, then at least they would know exactly what they're going to be judged on, and we give them a time frame, so that way we can evaluate them during that time frame, and then we can, decide to do this on an annual basis. So that's kind of like my thought is we want to be fair to everyone that works for us. In regards to the internal auditor, what I would love to be able to add is, since the internal auditor is evaluated by the audit committee, I would love for us to include that as part of the evaluation. So in that way we have that in our hands as we're making decisions, because there's someone else there's a group of people who oversees the internal auditor on a regular basis. So that's kind of like my thought, and see if we can land this on and I'd love for Vice Mayor Marino, since you're providing us the information, we can work with staff to come up with something that work with all the commissioners and see how we can create a performance analysis that we can kind of like all corral around based on the conversation that's been made. We have a workshop in February, and then we can determine the time frame in regards that they would, if it's 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is. So in that way, the people that reports to us know this is how they're going to be judged during the next 5 or 6 months, and then we do the evaluation. That's my thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And I very much agree with what you're saying. I wanted to discuss the timeline because some of these items will be setting expectations that may be new or maybe haven't been explicitly, written out, that these are what this board expects. And it's also a time for us to have a good understanding of where our role is in this process in county government. So we're all in agreement what we as a board are expecting, what our jobs are, and what the 3 contract employees that we have, what expectations we have of them. And there should be an amount of time, 6 months, I think is reasonable, that once we get all of this laid out on what our expectations are, what our role is, what their role is, 6 months, I believe, is sufficient for this. But I mean, we're not like 6 months from today, because we still have some items to work through. But I don't want to rush it to the point where, I understand we need to move forward, but we are kind of doing some new analysis here and setting a few new items that haven't been on paper before.
That's correct, and we did do this on a very tight timeline. So unfortunately, I think, I thought we did a pretty decent job with the forms, but there are some things on those forms that could be improved upon. The second part of that is, yes, indeed, to be fair to your employees, you ought to be in a position where they get their guidance and direction and expectations for performance in advance of an evaluation, especially if you're going to include goals and objectives that have not either been explicitly spelled out as a body to them, so they know exactly what they're being held accountable for. So my professional advice would be that would be the first meeting that takes place when you start talking to these folks about performance. That as a board, as a body, we're telling you over the next 12 months or whatever the time frame is, this is what we expect from you, and this is what the goals and objectives we've set for you. And also what success means, because the other part about setting a goal and objective, you need to be able to tell that person, what does success look like? And last but certainly not least, you have to be in a position where you have a reasonably achievable goal set that can be accomplished within that rating period. It makes no sense to set a goal for somebody who can't get it done within the time frame that's set.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Bernard, I agree with your tenants, what you're proposing. Commissioner Marino, Vice Mayor Marino, I would also very much appreciate having an opportunity to see what you spent your weekend doing.
Maybe not necessarily everything.
Not everything.
Not everything, right.
But what you did relative to gathering this information would be great. I also I think, in looking at, what I believe really well-run organizations do, I'd also like to put out there that as we're going through this process, I'd like to also consider doing what is called a 360, where the workforce also has an opportunity to evaluate their supervision. And so I think, I know we're not going to be able to accomplish it during this time frame, but I think it would be something that we would that the Palm Beach County would benefit from by having a tool like that. And I think it would really lead to, and I think in general, I'm very happy with our workforce, but I think it gives them an opportunity to play a role in the evaluation of how they see things, and I think it would be insightful for us to know that.
Interesting, okay. Thank you. And Commissioner Baxter, please.
Thank you. I do agree with Commissioner Bernard's timeline of 6 months. My only hesitation really is we are going to be full-blown in the middle of budget cycles. And so are we going to be having a lot of information presented to us all at once with budgeting and so on? And so whatever my board would like as a timeline, I'm okay with. I just want us to be cognizant of where we will be at that time as far as a board and evaluating information. And then if that's going to be our annual evaluation, I think bringing in somebody, let's say somebody comes in, say we as a board are either not happy or we are very happy. It really ties our hands in a lot of instances to make a free decision because of the cycle or the process that we are in. And where, it's just June, July, August. I'm pretty sure that's when all of the budget meetings are taking place, correct? Yes. So I would like my board to just keep that in mind when we're deciding this.
Very good, thank you. And Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in regards to the 360 workforce analysis, I know for us, I don't think that's something that we would probably be able to accomplish this year. So, I'd prefer that we would do that next year or something like that to give us enough time. And, so I think, to me, I just believe we go with option 3 and we agree to do the performance analysis needs to be done at the next workshop in February, and to give staff a 6-month period for us to be able to evaluate them. This is probably not going to be perfect, and then my hope and my goal would be that would give us enough time to have everything to have the analysis by probably before October 1st, because then we would have passed the budget. So that's kind of like my thinking is if we can, on or before October 1st, we can do the evaluations. The budget would have already been passed, and that gives us that opportunity to move forward.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions of staff, if I could. First of all, has this ever been done before in Palm Beach County?
Not with a form, no.
Not, pardon me, sir?
Not with a form, a document.
So they did it without a form?
What has happened in the past is the position incumbent would submit written correspondence to the board. In that correspondence would be a breakdown of the county's accomplishments during that period of time, or their respective department, depending upon who it is. Goals and objectives that were met or not met and why they weren't met, and direction that they believe the county's going in or their operations going into the next rating period, and whatever assistance they need from the board during the next rating period to achieve that goal.
This was done annually, sir, by?
Yes, annually.
By these 3 entities that we're
Yes.
reviewing today. And could we have, I'm sure there was a copy made of that.
There, I believe what we looked at were the ones that the former county administrator Bob Weissman would submit to the board.
But that was years ago.
Well, that was the last county administrator prior to the current county administrator.
So we have not had a survey, or we've not had an appraisal since.
We have not
how
had
many
a
years?
written appraisal process in place.
No, I'm not asking for written. You said that there was one done that was verbal, and that
Well-
was committed to written.
No,
You
there-
have some
there-
type
there-
of survey?
um,
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, yes, there has been subsequent ones to Bob Wiseman. Ms. Baker has had one. Former County Attorney Denise Neiman has had one, where they submitted their accomplishments.
Very good. We could have a copy of that? It could
Yes.
be given to everybody? So we have sort of a metric of the survey and the performance appraisal of what was done just recently. That had to be like within 2 years or something, right? Okay, that would be good. And secondly, I have a question with regard to the self-evaluations that you spoke about, that these 3 contract employees have done a self-evaluation of their department and their, their measurement of how they have performed. If we could have a copy of that as well. More information we have, the more really efficient our appraisals will be.
Madam Mayor, I think that
Yes.
what they're proposing is that during that time period, the 3 individuals who reports to us would provide us that self-evaluation, and then we would take that self-evaluation and be able to do our evaluation.
Correct.
But they've done that before as well. Is that correct? Is that what I heard?
The performance document that was submitted, to my recollection, wasn't a self-evaluation in per se, but they did talk about, again, their accomplishments on what they were successful in achieving during the course of that 12-month period of time, things that they did not get done.
That's
why they
exactly what
didn't
I'd
get
like
them
to
done.
see.
Okay.
Okay, and the chief is shaking his head. That is
Just
exactly
to
what I'd like
clarify,
Sir.
the ones I've seen were not done on an annual basis. It was done at a period where the contract is being renewed. So
Their contract for employment? was
yeah,
being
one was
reviewed.
expiring and the other one, the subsequent one was being considered by the board, and they submitted their accomplishments over the period of the contract.
Very good. That would be very helpful, I think, for us to see, because this way we could see a self-evaluation that they did before we are evaluating them at this time, and to see whether they have been able to complete their goals as indicated by their own departments. So I think the more information we have about these 3 contract employees would be extremely helpful. Now, either I could have somebody from the board summarize what we're going to do and vote on today, or someone from staff who would like to.
I
Would you-
can
would you?
probably
Go right
summarize
ahead,
it,
Commissioner,
so-
but I figured you would. Go right ahead, sir.
So what I'm asking is that for us to agree on the performance appraisal by the February workshop. And yes, it's not going to be perfect, and Vice Mayor Marino would provide, but I would love for you to work with staff, so in that way. So if we can, and they can, no, but I want to make sure that they have it.
They'll get it.
And
They'll
so,
get it. It's got good staff.
and so we would have that. And then for us to create a 6-month period to be able to evaluate, to set the goals, and for within 6 months, then we could do the evaluation process of the staff members. And then for us to do the actual evaluation after the budget, but on or before October 1st. And then also, we would also consider the performance, which is I think Commissioner Weiss had mentioned, how the staff communicate with us. That's also been mentioned. The 360 workforce analysis would be something that would be done in the future. And then also, Commissioner Baxter had mentioned how are residents being heard, and we can figure out how do we evaluate that, create a, okay?
Good. Did we get that all down? Very, very good. Is it necessary for us to vote on this? I would think so. No? Okay, then it's done. It's done. Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation. It's going to be a work in progress. Yes. I've heard that we do not need to have a vote on this. Did you want to say something, Commissioner Barnett?
No, I just thought we'd have a vote.
Okay, if you want to say anything, you can. Otherwise, we don't need to have a vote on this. We've given them direction, and I believe that that direction reflects the will of the board. All right? Okay. Thank you so much. We have, at this time, we have some cards. I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping, if it's okay with everybody, and I'd like to appoint Lori Vinegar to the Zoning Commission. All right, Chief. And if there's no objections, then we can see that everybody's for, nobody opposes, passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, now, with that done, we have a couple of cards that we're going to read. To my left, Commissioner Weiss is, and we'll proceed. Okay. There are some cards, I have been told, on 4A. So as your name is called, come on up. We have 2 podiums, and we'll proceed as soon as you... Okay, this is on 4... the workshop 4A. Okay, going on, it's like I have one missing, but 4A, all right. This is on the Equal Business Opportunity Program. And staff? Since this is workshop, we'll hear from staff. Good morning. Chief, you might as well just keep you sitting there
Yes,
all the
ma'am.
time, right?
Should have
Good
just
morning.
stayed. Good morning, Mayor Sachs,
Good morning.
Vice Mayor, members of the board, and Administrator Baker. During the November 21st, 2023 Board of County Commissioners meeting, the Office of Equal Business Opportunity was tasked with presenting an overview of the programs and services provided by OEBO, to include vendor registration, certification, eligibility, and appeals process, compliance, the waiver process, fiscal year 2023 utilization and participation report, as well as the first quarter of FY 2024 utilization and participation report, and feedback from the survey of vendors who have not received payment or contract from Palm Beach County. Additionally, staff will provide the status of the disparity study request for proposal, and the county attorney's office will provide an update on the Board of County Commissioners' ability to amend the Equal Business Opportunity Ordinance. Joining me today is Tanya Davis-Johnson, Director of Office of Equal Business Opportunity, Alan Gray, Manager, Deidre Kyle, Small Business Development Specialist 3, and I'll now turn it over to Tanya to proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. You recognize Tanya.
Thank you. Good morning. At the request of the board, good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, and Administrator Baker. At the request of the board, during the November 21st meeting, joining us in the audience is Ms. Colleen Robbs, Director of the Office of Equal Business Opportunity for the Solid Waste Authority. I'll turn it over to Alan Gray to proceed with the presentation.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So on the screen there, you have the mission statement and the vision for the Office of Equal Business Opportunity.
So I'm going to need you to speak a little bit more into the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me
Thank you,
better
sir.
now?
Yes.
So the Office of Equal Business Opportunity, what we do is foster, of course, the inclusion of small businesses in the procurement process for Palm Beach County, and also act as a resource for all the small businesses here in Palm Beach County. As you know, the EBO ordinance establishes the Office of Equal Business Opportunity. along with the affirmative procurement initiatives, which is what we use to establish requirements and increase opportunities for small business in the procurement process. It also establishes a couple of committees, our advisory committee and goal setting committee, and other program elements. Now, one of those program elements is our certification program, which I'll talk about extensively. So in order to be a certified business in Palm Beach County, there are certain eligibility requirements that the business must meet, and we'll go over some of those right now. So businesses must be registered with the state of Florida Department of Corporations. Business must be registered with the Palm Beach County Purchasing Department. Must provide a commercially useful function, which means performing or managing and supervising some of the work that they actually perform. They must have a Palm Beach County business tax receipt. And they must also have a significant business presence in Palm Beach County, meaning that they have some regular employees at the business in which they say they're located here in Palm Beach County. And also it must be independently owned and operated. Now, if that business is also seeking to become a certified minority or women business, they must show that the business is at least 51 owned, managed, and controlled by one or more minority groups or women that is ready, willing, and able to provide those services. In addition to those, the applicant business and any of its affiliates and subsidiaries must meet the size requirements established by the ordinance, which you see on the right-hand side of the slide. Those gross receipts are averaged over a 3-year period for the various business categories, construction being 9 million, goods being 5 million, professional services 5, professional services CCNA, which is for your non-CCNA, I should say, not to exceed 4 million, and other services 4 million. Now, how do they go about getting certified? So here's the process. First step is that they have to be registered as a vendor. Once they've registered as a vendor in the county's VSS system, it then allows them to go ahead and proceed with an online certification application. Now, there's 2 processes in which they can be certified. They can do the online process or standard paper process. Once that application is submitted to our office, is then assigned to a specialist who will be the single point of contact for that vendor from that point forward. Once that application is reviewed by the specialist, it's submitted to myself for review. And then once I review that documentation, the determination is either made that they're either certified or denied that certification. As I mentioned, there are 2 processes. The application requires documentation to be submitted with both. The paper copy, obviously, the applicant submits all the copies of the backup documentation with their application is then notarized online. They get to upload all their PDF documents, submit that online. They sign the letter of attestation.
Where am I going?
Just hold on, let me get back to where I was supposed to be. I was going forward.
While we wait
instead
for
of
it to come
backwards.
back,
Yeah.
while we wait for it to come back, a
There we go.
little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to pass the gavel over to Vice Mayor Marino, and I have to leave at this time, but I'm sure we're in good hands. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. So applying for minority and women business status, there are additional documentation that needs to be provided. Proof of gender and ethnicity. Some of the documentation that they can present is either a driver's license or a military record, and sometimes even a birth certificate. So one of the things we do is certification compliance. In addition to some of the documentation that we may request with the application, we reserve the right to ask for some additional documentation. Sometimes we may ask for, depending on when we're looking at the application, if there's a trust that is involved, we may ask for a copy of the trust. The ordinance also talks about, the independent ownership and control. The primary decision-making has to be done by the minority or women business, so we'd have to have policies to look at in order to establish that. And there also shouldn't be any type of restrictions into the ownership and control of the business for the minority or women business who's indicated that they own the business. Under the review process, the standard review process takes up to 90 days. once we receive all documentation required by the application. If they want to expedite that process, there is a 20-day process. We call it an expedited review request that they can apply for. It does cost $300 to do that, but we will review that application within 20 business days. We do let the applicant know that any documentation that is submitted is subject to the Sunshine Law. We do, however, allow them, if they do not wish to have their tax returns open to public view, we'll arrange a separate meeting to review those taxes with them so they can take those documents back with them so they're not subject to the public records law. We do have an interlocal agreement with the City of West Palm Beach and the School District of Palm Beach County. It's not a reciprocity process, it's just a paper reduction process, whereas we do the review, we supply them with an interlocal document, which they then can take over to the city or the school district to show that we have reviewed their application, and then there may be a couple of documents they may have to submit with those two agencies in order to secure certification with them, but it greatly reduces the amount of paperwork that they have to submit in order to secure additional certifications. The additional agencies that you see below that accept our certifications are Solid Waste Authority, South Florida Water Management District, as well as the City of Riviera Beach. Now, these are some of the other duties that are performed by OEBO. We do attend the pre-award meetings. We also schedule compliance review after the contracts are submitted. We do a review of applicability of the APIs and whether or not the contractors have met those requirements. We assist the SMWBEs in performance and payment issues. We do conduct debriefings on for those vendors who have not won the award, just to kind of let them know maybe some things they may need to improve in order to be successful next time around. We attend the post-award meetings, that's after the vendor has been selected, just to make sure that where they initially committed, things haven't changed between the time that they committed and actually go to contract. And then we also monitor that contract to make sure that they meet those commitments. And from time to time, if necessary, we go out and do construction job sites just to make sure that the small businesses are out there actually performing on the jobs. Now, in the pre-award process, we're looking for the compliance reviews. They're submitted by the prime contractors to document their SBE participation. The questions we ask is that business a certified small business? And actually, can we determine what work is actually be performed and the value of that work? And if so, are they certified as a small business in the line of work which are indicated on those schedules 1 and 2? After contract has been awarded, we then look for those schedules 3 and 4 to be submitted by the contractor that indicate whether this is a multi-year contract, are the subcontractors that were initially identified for the contract, are they still working on the project? And is their prime on track for meeting their required commitment? And then, of course, the ECMS system is where the departments go in and put in all this information to actually track the participation from the prime. We go in and monitor at, the 25, 50, and 75% completion, just to make sure that before the project is 100% complete, we're not caught by any surprises of them failing to meet their required goals. So on this sheet, last slide here, we have the waiver process. So there are three types of waivers. We have the departmental waiver, the good faith waiver, and the post-bid opening waiver. Now, the department waiver, that's where the originating department will get with OEBO prior to the solicitation being advertised. They will submit a memo to the director of the office, a completed goal-setting worksheet that lists all the scopes of works and services that they anticipate to be needed for that particular solicitation, and backup documentation as to what the vendor availability is. We will review that information with the department, and if we determine that this solicitation is eligible for a waiver, the director will submit a memo or write a memo indicating that the API waiver will be granted for that solicitation and no goal will be set for that solicitation. The good faith waiver, effort waiver, is one in where the API goal has been set, well, prior to API goal has been set, but prior to the actual opening or due date of a solicitation, contractors approach us and say, well, hey, we cannot meet the goal in which was established for the solicitation. But they have to submit that at least 7 days prior to the bid due date or bid opening date. Once we receive that documentation from the contractor indicating their inability to meet that goal, filling out the same documentation, who they've contacted, what their responses were from those small business or non-responses that they haven't received, we will go ahead and evaluate that. And if in fact we agree with that, we will go ahead and issue a waiver of that goal or reduce the goal that has been established for that solicitation. And that's made available to all the contractors who are looking to respond to that solicitation. So everyone is aware now that the API goal has now changed and these have been reduced or waived completely. If in fact, the contractor submits the waiver and we don't agree with it, they do have the ability to appeal that process. And the last one we have is the post-bid opening waiver. So if the contractor is unable to meet the participation required specified at response submittal through no fault of their own, the contractor then can come back and say, hey, things have changed, or my subcontractors who initially said they were available now have run into some issues and now no longer available. They now can come back and say, can I substitute out or can I get a waiver of the goal because of these unintended or unforeseen circumstances? And again, they'll submit documentation to our office. We'll look that over to see whether or not they did make an effort to either keep their commitment or at least reach out to other small businesses that may be unavailable. And if not, then we'll go ahead and reduce that goal for them as well. And then at that particular point in time, they would submit some updated schedules 1 and 2 to identify any new subcontractor, be they non-minority or as minority, to replace that subcontractor. And I'll turn it back over to Director Tanya Davis-Donster for the numbers.
Good morning again. During fiscal year 2023, there were a total of 684 certified vendors. The breakdown is as follows: 271 SBE, 69 WBE, 208 MBE, 136 SMWBEs. The breakdown in the area of construction in the industries are construction, 228, professional services, CCNA, which are architects, engineers, and surveyors, 96, 137 in non-CCNA professional services, goods and other services, 138, and we had a total of 85 businesses that had businesses certified in 2 or more business classes. Under the MBE breakdown, we had 20 Asian businesses certified, 114 Black, 71 Hispanic, 1 Native American, and 2 other. And in the MWBE category, we had 8 Asian, 97 Black, 31 Hispanic. We have provided for you a breakdown of those certifications by commission district. Is it the board's pleasure that we go through each one of them? No? Okay. But it totals 684, and you can see the breakdown by category and by race, gender, and ethnicity. For the first quarter of fiscal year 2024, 62 newly certified and recertified vendors. SBE 21, WBE 4, 15 SMWBEs, 22 MBEs. The categories for the industries are to the left: construction, 26, professional services, CCNA 4, professional services, non-CCNA 14, goods and other services 12, and those businesses that are certified in 2 or more business classes, total 8. The breakdown by race and gender is Asian 1, Black 15 for minority business enterprises, Hispanic 6, and 0 for Native American. There was 0 in the Asian category, Black 11, Hispanic 4. We have also provided for you the breakdown of certifications for the first quarter of fiscal year 2024 by commission districts totaling 62. Outreach activities. Outreach activities are critical and important to the growth and development of small businesses. We use that by conducting targeted outreach, general outreach, and outreach that we conduct in partnership with other agencies. We show a total of 60 events, and the breakdown is as follows. 17 were targeted, specifically looking for areas that the county is procuring goods and services, general outreach that provided training and other resources, referrals to resources and information, and partnerships where we worked with other agencies to provide information on small minority business certification with Palm Beach County. This slide shows the total number of events that were hosted, and it gives you a breakdown of those events. So some examples of the partnered outreach would be the Elders Table, which is an event that's held down in Delray, Hispanic Heritage Month, Housing Leadership Equity. We work with the Palm Beach County School District on best practices and outreach. And then internally, departmentally, we worked with the Department of Community Services Action Advisory Board to share information. We work with the various chambers, and we also participated in the Solid Waste Project 2024 Business Forecasting event. And then we conduct other events in the Four Points building so that we can share information that supports the cross-directional team and making sure that county departments are aware of what it is that we do so that as they're sharing information about the programs and services offered by the Office of Equal Business Opportunity, they are well-versed. This information shares the fiscal year 2023 utilization, and these figures represent the cumulative participation of small minority women business enterprises in non-exempt contracts with an applied API across all industries. And remember, when we talk about across all industries, we are talking about construction, professional services, CCNA and non, and then other goods and services. So let's start with the red bullet. SBEs accounted for 12.54% of the dollars that were spent, totaling $36,711,408.93. Our WBEs account for 2.52%, $7,376,151.32. Our MBEs accounted for 8.17%, or $23,924,079.44. Now, we have to further break that out for you because we know that the categories consist of Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native American, and other. You see the numbers, or I'm happy to read them out, but the numbers show that MBE Asian in that 8.17% overall, 1.73 is accounted for in the Asian category, 2.75%, or $38,934.34 for MBE Black. MBE Hispanic accounts for 3.69, or $10,793,035.93, and MBE Other, 14,605. The total SMWBE participation, 23.23 for $68,011,639.69, and the total non-SBE spend was 76.77%, or $224,824,520.46. We provided, so that the board would understand how the dollars are spent, we provided you a breakdown by commission districts. Would you like for that to be read, or? Okay. But as you can see, each district shows the spend. Okay. For a fiscal year 2024 quarter one, In your initial packets, there was a total, there was an error, and we wanted to make sure that we caught it, and it is reflected in this slide. The total and it was dealing with the total non-SBE spend. So in this particular figure, again, these represent the cumulative participation of SMWBEs in non-exempt contracts with an applied API across all agencies. Across all industries. So SBEs accounted for 8.42%. MBEs accounted for 9.11%. This has the largest breakdown as we break it by race. So you have your Asian category, 1.66%, or 1,030,713.04. MBE Black, 1.85, 1.149, 98655. MBE Hispanic accounts for 5.56%, totaling 3,455,339.02. MBE Native American, 0.02, 13,376. MBE Other, 0.02%, $16,096.32. So our SMWBE participation in the first quarter of fiscal year 2024 is 20.84%, $12,959,117.15. Our total non-SBE spend was $79.16, $49,221,094.26. Again, we have provided the SMWBE utilization by commission districts. And that concludes the numbers. What I want to follow up on the request of the board was the survey that we conducted. There were 320 vendors in our system that received a one-question survey. That survey was sent out December 29th and then again on January 11th. We didn't receive any email responses. However, what we did do is we made calls to vendors, and we continue to make calls to vendors to understand what's going on with them, why they have not received any contracts, or why they don't show any payments. For the board's information, as I said, we sent out an email link and a QR code for ease and convenience for the responders. The one-question survey simply said that the Office of Equal Business Opportunity is seeking your assistance in identifying how we can improve our services. Our records show that your company has not received any payments from Palm Beach County in the past 3 years. Please take a moment to let us know why. And these are some of the reasons that we put down for them to be able to check off. I am recently certified and unfamiliar with the process, or I have not submitted any bids or proposals to the county as a prime or subcontractor consultant. I have not received an email notification with business opportunities. I primarily provide services to another government agency. I have submitted multiple bids or proposals and have not been successful. Or prime contractors, consultants contact me, but don't give me enough time or information to prepare for a quote or other with a write-in. Now, what we did do is we just randomly selected some of the small businesses that were in this list. And again, we are still continuing to make those calls to get information since we didn't get a reply by email. The responses that we did get indicate that they have not submitted bids or proposals as a prime, or that they have not received an email notification with business opportunities. And that was where most of the comment did come back for the calls that we made. We'll continue to provide a report to Administrator Baker so that she can share it with the board on the outcome of the responses that we get from the calls. And then finally, as it relates to the updated disparity study, the RFP for the updated disparity study, we have worked with the Office of the Purchasing and the County Attorney's Office to prepare and release the disparity study update RFP. The RFP was made available on January 16th, 2024 on the website. On January 26th, there was a non-mandatory pre-proposal conference that was held via WebEx. The deadline for receipt of questions is February 2nd, so any of those that attended or any individual that wishes to bid as a prime contractor has until February 2nd to submit their questions to the purchasing department so that we can provide a response to all of those who intend to bid. And the receipt of proposals, the deadline for receipt of proposals is February 26, 2024 at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That completes our report and our requests. Based on the board's direction, we are now open for questions.
Thank you. We also have comment cards, and since the mayor has said yes, we would take comments at this time. Commissioner Weiss, do you want to read the comment cards? Actually, before we do that, I don't see any lights on, so I don't see any questions for staff at the moment. Okay, comment cards, please.
Thank you. I have 3 comment cards here. Mamie Kisner, followed by Michelle DePotter, followed by Evelyn Looney.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, and Virginia Baker, our Administrator. Thank you for the hard work that you do every day. We pray for you daily because we know it's very difficult, and also the hardworking staff at the county. Today, I am speaking as a citizen for the voice of the voiceless, the people who cannot be at these meetings but have a voice. And if most of you know me, I speak for the community, many of the community members. The Palm Beach County OEBO program encourages the small businesses to become SBE certified by promising businesses the opportunity to help them to grow. Palm Beach County policy mandates procurement initiatives to help small and minority businesses as they grow. And those impact our citizens in our communities with jobs, as well as bringing the money back into our communities directly. The OEBO conducts numerous outreach programs, and those programs are informing not only the small businesses, but also our community of the commitment of the small businesses to increase their capacity and their self-sufficiency under these programs. And then, just as a small business reaches their full potential, Palm Beach County ordinances require that large businesses yank a small business legally binding contract and terminate them for the project in the mid part of the project, just because they no longer are an SBE, because they've grown just too much. Mid-project is the firm what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to fire their staff. Then people are jobless again. How are they expected to make up the loss of the revenue? And who benefits from that policy? The policy fails small and minority businesses who grow under that program. So in your consideration of reviewing, please consider that for the citizens, that this impacts not only the small businesses, but it also impacts our community. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bernard, you have a question or comment?
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor. Mimi Kismer did mention something in regards to the small businesses who are kind of like terming out. And I know last time that was like something that you proposed to us. And I know, Michelle, I'm probably going to steal your thunder, but I'll let you speak first, and then I'd like to kind of like ask staff a question.
Oh, okay. Well, you're not going to steal my thunder, although I do agree with everything she just said about trading contractors out mid-contract. But just for the record, Michelle DePotter, CEO of the AGC Florida East Coast Chapter, 515 North Flagler, West Palm Beach, Suite 910. We represent general contractors, specialty contractors, suppliers, and service providers to our industry. And as of this month, for 75 years, we've been the local voice of construction. I'm a bit under the weather today, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to come before you to talk about an eligibility criteria that was on the agenda for you guys. I want to say it was November 7th when you took a look at the potential of sunsetting the disparity study. There was a second item that surrounded the volume. The volume for eligible criteria for construction is $9 million. It's been that way since 2008. maybe 2005, but I think it's 2008. And we think that this is purely economics. Construction, as you know, has increased over the years. And in order to get in compliance, if you will, or in line, I would say, with the Consumer Price Index and the U.S. Small Business Administration's current recommendations and NASIX, we'd like to see that increase to 13 million. That was a staff recommendation to you all. We've agreed with that for many, many years. It doesn't matter whether the program ultimately is small business or race and gender neutral or conscious. That's an item that we would like to bring up for your reconsideration. Hopefully, ultimately, potentially your support for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard, do you want to continue? And then Commissioner Woodward, you'll be recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor. I know that's something that I've been thinking about, and then also with Memmy Kisner bringing it up, I think that I'd love for this board to take a look at increasing, and I'd love to maybe hear from the county attorney's office or staff to let us know how can we increase, if we wanted to as a board, to increase the volume.
If you will, thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we presented back in November, we did make a recommendation to increase the size standards because our size standards had not been changed since 2009. We took a look at the CPI, and we also looked at the SBA standards, and we did do a comparison of what the size standards were. Our recommendation was to increase our size standards as follows. We requested for the board's approval to increase the size standards from construction from 9 million to 13 million, from 5 million to 7 million professional services CCNA, from 5 million to 7 million goods, and from 4 million to 5.7 professional services non-CCNA and other services. Those were the recommendations of staff after having looked at the Consumer Price Index, looking at the SBA, looking at the NICS codes, and looking at our counterparts and where they were.
So, thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor. Is this something that this board can vote to?
We'll let the attorney weigh in.
Thank you, Commissioner. From the perspective of the county attorney's office, there is a concern that raising the minimum size standards changes the size or the definition of SPE that was relied upon by the disparity study. So effectively, if we're relying on the disparity study for the compelling governmental interest in having a race and gender-based program, that disparity study also used the county's definition of small business enterprise, relying on the size standards that we currently have. So changing the size standards may redefine what a small minority business enterprise is, or what a small women business minority enterprise is. So it may be more prudent to wait until we have a disparity study that analyzes business entities under a new size criteria.
Madam Vice Mayor, I disagree with the attorney's assessment of this. So I think that since staff made that recommendation to us, if it's the will of the board, I'd like to make a motion to approve the volume standard that staff had recommended to us, and which would be what you mentioned, which was 9 to 13 million for the constructions, I believe, is that what it was? And then 5 to 7 million for the CCNA, 5 to 7 for goods and services, and the 4 to 0.57, I think that's the
5.7 for professional
4 to
services.
5.7 professional services.
And other services.
And others, okay.
All right, we had a motion and we have a second from Commissioner Woodward. Do you still have comments? Please. And then Commissioner Weiss will be after you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I'm glad that this came up. I wanted to discuss increasing the thresholds. I agree that I think we can go ahead and do this. And since we are putting out for a new disparity study at this point anyway, it can address the changes that we're making. I did want to know about increasing the thresholds. Do we have where if a company graduates mid-project, do they have to be removed from the project, or can that continue throughout the completion of the contract?
All right, so the process is policy says that the business must continuously meet the eligibility requirements for being certified. So the options that the consultant has is that, A, they can say, hey, I'm at a critical nature with this firm and I can't replace him, so can I apply for a waiver? So they can then come back and ask, can we reduce the goal based on the fact that they're no longer certified, and so they're no longer going to be able to meet their commitment? That's one option. Second option is, of course, they can say, okay, well, they're not at a critical nature, and we can find another small business that's currently certified, and we'll replace them with another small business that meets the size requirement to move forward with the project. So there are two options that they can move forward with.
Okay, so I do have some concerns about that. If we have contractors who are under contract, and just because they, some of these contracts go multi-years, and if they were to graduate, I do have a problem with them having to go through an additional waiver process instead of just being able to complete the project. Is that something that we can address as well?
Sure.
So what I think, since we're increasing the size right now, then I believe that we'll be able to address some of these contractors who are running into this right now. And when we do the disparity study and we make the changes, then we can change the requirement that they could finish the job, until the job is finished. So is that one way that we can do that?
It would require an ordinance revision. What I would suggest, and one of the things that we do discuss with the county attorney's office, is we had an attorney that would come in, and if the ordinance is challenged, he would have to defend it because he was the one that wrote it, and that's Franklin Lee of Tidings. But what we would do is we would go back to Mr. Lee, because in the ordinance, it does say that when a business does graduate, we have to remove them because they have exceeded the size standards and the eligibility requirements. However, that was something that we wanted to take a look at when we were going to revise the ordinance as a change. Okay. And so we would definitely like to have the opportunity to consult with Mr. Lee, to consult with Madam Administrator, and just to make sure that in the revisions that we're making, these are things that he can stand by and legally defend. And I believe that has been the position of the County Attorney's Office as it relates to changes to the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, generally, yes. And the ordinance does state that the amendment shall be narrowly tailored in accordance with the applicable law, and typically that has rested on the opinion of the outside expert who drafted the ordinance.
Could I use the last couple of minutes? I don't need all of them, but just as an assurance for your vote, which I think you just took.
We didn't take a vote, we made a motion.
You're getting ready to vote. So let me just reiterate that the disparity study was done during the years of the downturn. Construction's been on an upturn. The volume has certainly increased, so have the costs and everything associated with it. And changing out contractors mid-project is a whole host of problems. Everything from warranties and liability, risk, and all of that, you all get that. But anyway, I just wanted to reiterate that.
So
the timeline of the previous study.
I guess the question is, can we vote to allow?
You have to amend the ordinance.
Do we need to amend the ordinance?
May I? I'm sorry.
Yes, we are getting into free for all of a sudden. Commissioner Weiss, you were next, but Administrator Baker, you had.
I wanted to just pipe in because those were some of my concerns when we started with this process. That's one of the reasons we made the recommendation to increase. However, we don't want to jeopardize the program that we have in place. So I would like the board to give us the direction to talk to our attorney on this, outside attorney, to make sure that when we make the size adjustments, that we're not putting ourselves in peril and not have to wait any longer. The other is, I don't believe we should be kicking people off because they expire. We're going to correct that. However, I think we need to look at when they're submitted, especially for multi-year projects, that they're not about to expire the month after they get the job, because that defeats the purpose. But a period of time, if they expire during the middle of the contract, they continue through the contract, whether it's multi-years or not, and they count toward meeting that goal. But again, we need to talk to the experts so that if we're challenged, we're standing on solid ground on this particular one. But I do agree with that. I do agree with increasing the size because it's costing more. Our projects are costing more. We're realizing that. The contractors are realizing that. And I do agree that they should not be kicked off once the teams are set. But I also don't want somebody coming in, put on a team, and before we can even get the project fully going, they've expired in the first year.
Right.
I don't think that's fair to the other groups that could have participated and completed the project.
And $9 million is not a lot in gross revenue for construction, public projects and public construction, for sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. So I guess I'm fine with the idea of raising these levels up. But my question is to the attorney, and I think in same vein as the administrator. What's our liability? What are we looking at? And what would, if in fact we were to go through this without having the disparity study to accompany it, as you're recommending?
Well, at this moment, it's not perfectly clear whether, because there's no disparity study that says that, the small businesses with the increased size standards, whether there's a compelling government interest in or gross statistical disparity with those size standards. In terms of, worst case, you have
what would be the implication of that?
Well, the implication is that we have not analyzed that yet with the disparity study.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
that's fine.
Just to clarify what I'm asking, so what would be the liability for the county? Would we then be subject to a lawsuit? Would the judge intervene and then put everything on hold until it's adjudicated? What?
It would really depend on the type of suit that's brought, the type of release that's sought. Just like with any action that the board takes, it could be challenged. This is an ordinance that has race and gender-based elements, so it is subject to a higher degree of judicial scrutiny. And that's generally been why any amendments that have been, or any potential amendments, be run through our outside expert so he could vet it, and in the event that we need him to defend it in court, he can sit and say that he reviewed any changes and that he agreed with them.
Madam
okay,
Chair?
and then also, as it relates to state statute, wasn't there last year, didn't they enact some statute that opens us up for if an ordinance, if somebody feels it's unfair or lost business, that they put the ordinance on hold immediately? Does anyone, I'm looking, somebody know what, I know, Ryan, you may not be an expert on this, so I apologize, but I know they did pass an ordinance last year.
I don't see anybody jumping up to answer this question.
I don't know that there's any experts here. Todd probably is the best one that remembers what happened last year, what they did.
Tanya, did you want to?
I guess.
Okay.
So I guess maybe I compromise with you, Commissioner, is to go ahead and give direction, ask them to take it out to outside counsel, get an opinion back, and then we can, because I think we need to amend the ordinance. Especially, I don't want to see people kicked off partway through. Not only does it hurt them, but it hurts the whole project, slows everything down, and we're not accomplishing really anything by doing that. So I support everything you're saying. I just want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy and causing more chaos in this.
Commissioner Bernard?
Well, I support your position, but I don't believe that raising the volume would really impact the disparity study, because I don't think that you made the volume based on, based on the study. And then so I believe that we can vote for it, and we can ask the outside counsel to approve, to kind of like give us the go-ahead, but I don't think that it's going to be an issue. And this is not like, I believe the statute that passed, this ordinance actually helps businesses, so it's not like it's hurting businesses, so.
So,
No clapping,
No,
please,
so
no clapping.
so I believe, so what we could do is we could vote on it and then subject to being reviewed by our council.
Well, before we vote, we still have Commissioner Baxter, Commissioner Woodward, and Administrator Baker.
We just,
Just so you know, I wanted to discuss something after we vote on this.
Okay. Commissioner Woodward?
I would just like to clarify, are we adding the ability to not have to remove graduating firms with the advice coming from outside counsel on this?
the ordinance to do that.
Well, we've
Got to amend the ordinance even for the increase in the volume. So we can do two-prong approach. One, board gives us direction to move forward. While we're doing that, because we got to amend the ordinance, we'll be in touch with the legal. If there's an issue, we'll come back to the board. If there's no issue, we'll move forward with the first reading, second reading, and adoption. For both issues.
You had a
Thank you.
comment?
we just wanted to make a point of clarification as it relates to the size standard. Deidre Kyle?
Good morning, Commissioners, Ms. Baker. In terms of the disparity studies and the review of it, the size standards really don't have an impact on how the study is conducted or the outcome. Separate and apart from a study, it would fall under the rational scrutiny review, which basically says if it's good for the organization, if it's good for the community and not harming anybody, then it's okay. So separate and apart, yes, it's fine. It has no impact whatsoever on how a disparity study is conducted or how it's reviewed.
So where does that leave us now?
That's exactly what I was trying to say. So, so really what you have is like when you're doing the race and the gender, that's got to be where you've got one standard. And then now in regards to the size, that's basically the will of the board that determines the size and when someone gets off, because it really has nothing to do with the other portion of it.
All right, I see no more lights.
We have another card.
We have one more card. Thank you for the discussion in between cards. Michelle, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, just thank you very much for your consideration and your ultimate vote. Thanks.
Thank you. And one more card, please.
Hello, good morning, county leaders. Thank you all so much for your service. My name is Evelyn Looney. I'm a Palm Beach County native, born and raised here. I actually graduated from Palm Beach Lakes High School. I'm here today representing a certified minority business, and the goal is for us to express support for the program. It is necessary. Our company had the pleasure of getting certified about 10 years ago, and the certification process and program has created life-changing opportunities, not just for us as a business, but also the community members that we're serving. Our firm primarily focuses on temporary staffing services, and we regularly get the opportunity to place locals into positions on county projects, which is absolutely amazing. Other services that we get from the department include support and assistance with understanding the county's purchasing program, right? Because procurement is almost like a language in itself. And when you don't know, you don't know. So the support and the assistance, the technical assistance that the department offers is something that we regularly take advantage of. In addition, they give opportunities for us to participate in professional development workshops, which are awesome for us and our teammates. And another thing that we absolutely love are the matchmaking events that we get to participate in, where we get to, sit at the tables with these primes where I'm not sure if not for the programs, we would have a seat at these tables. And it's allowed our business to work in industries that we never anticipated. We've gained experience with companies that is really allowing us to grow. So if not for this program, I don't know if our company would be the company that we are today, and we just want to express our tremendous support for it and ask the board to continue to support and fund it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Weiss, your light is on.
Yeah, thank you. This is, I guess this is back to the presentation we had. So when we look at the, what is it, the $220 billion that you had on your slide, does that include 224 million, 224 million. Does that include sole source, things like software?
When you're talking about
The
I'm
total
sorry.
non-SBE.
Slide 27.
So we look at all,
This is the slide.
sole source does not apply under the ordinance. It is not subject to the ordinance, but you want to know if those dollars are included in the overall cost? Yes, we look at the total dollars that are spent.
So,
We look at exempt
I
and
guess
non-exempt.
My point, or what I think, I don't think that they should be, like, you have no choice if you're going to buy a particular software package. There's only one source for it. And there's no way for anyone else to participate in that. So it actually, in a way, I guess, to me, it skews the numbers.
I'm sorry, clarification. Those numbers are not included in these numbers. Sole source dollars are not.
So you're telling me if there's no software in there?
No, I'm telling you that those dollars, what we are reporting to you are the dollars that are subject to the OEB ordinance. That's the dollars that we are presenting
They're already excluded
today.
from the ordinance?
They're extracted
Okay.
out, yes.
In that case, then, very good, no problem.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Bernard.
Madam Vice Mayor, what I would like, maybe if we were able to, at least if you can include that for us in the future, so in that way we'll know exactly what the sole source number is. So in the future, when you're doing a presentation, we'll know that number. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion. We have a second. Can we have the motion reread, please? Or restated?
So the motion would be to increase the volume size as was based on the last recommendation in November, and also to include, to not have SPE contractors stop what they're doing, to graduate so they can complete the job, and also for us to speak to outside counsel to make sure whatever changes that we're making are legal. Is that?
Yes, just the point. Again, I'd like give us some lead time for that sub. If the sub is going to expire within a month or so, as soon as they get a multi-year contract, because they can always come in and register or re-register a little early, so they cover that period of time. We just don't want this to end up being, we want it to be fair to all players that's going to be able to participate. That's all.
Okay. So that's.
So let's say within 30 days, within 30 days of the contract being awarded, that person should be eligible, so that they don't, the moment the contract goes, then they graduate.
Okay.
And then they're on 2-3-year contract. I mean, that's taking away from others that could have bidded on that contract as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Woodward.
I have a question. When does a firm graduate? Is it based on their annual, like, do they have a fiscal year? What determines their graduation level?
We look at their gross revenue averaged over 3 years. So when they exceed that size standard limit, it's when we say they have graduated from the program.
And so is that based on when they entered the program, those 3 years, or is it 3 calendar years?
So it's at research, at certification, we look at their size standard, which determines whether or not they meet the eligibility criteria and is then certified. At recertification, we will then look at their gross receipts again to determine if they are still continued eligible for the program. If we find at the time of recertification that they have exceeded the size standard, we consider that firm to have graduated from the program. They are then notified, and then we have to take the appropriate steps to notify the department and move forward in the process.
Okay, so I'm just curious, because if we do the 30 days from a contract, it may not actually fall into line when their recertification is, I'm just concerned on if we put a 30-day time limit, and how do we actually measure this?
I'm open to the days. We'll review this a little further. I'm just concerned with opportunities being minimized if people are coming up on it and decide not to recertify. Actually, the size standard is going to help tremendously on this issue. But for those that are close already to those size standards, we want to make sure if they're eligible, they can still do the job and bid. But we also don't want them to end up not allowing others to continue to grow. So we'll review this, and as we come back with modifications to the ordinance, we'll have better answers for you after further analysis.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
I just want to be clear that we don't end these relationships while we're going through this process until we get this new ordinance adopted. So that, is there a way that you can put this in abeyance until we get the ordinance done, so that we're not kicking people off of projects midway if it happens in between now and when we're able to amend the ordinance?
Because the ordinance specifically commands, it's law. So the ordinance says once a firm graduates, then it's no longer eligible under the contract.
What's the period of time for recertification then?
1 year after they graduate? Because we have to,
No, you're misunderstanding my question.
I'm sorry,
How often, so once they're in, when do they get recertified?
every 3 years. It's a triennial review. So a business is certified for 3 years.
So it'll be on their 3-year anniversary, they'll have to submit for
Recertification.
it happens prior to that anniversary? When does it actually happen?
Well, like she said, you're certified every 3 years. We encourage them to apply early so they can apply, while their current certification or certification's in process. So they can apply 6 months before their certification expires. But it still doesn't kick in until their actual 3 years is up.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Chair, Commissioner Weiss asked about the total spend for the sole source. So in the report, in the fiscal year report on page 12, we provide for you the dollar spend of exempt contracts. And the exempt contracts include sole source, emergency purchases, federal and state contracts, agreements, municipal governments, agreements with municipal governments, nonprofit agencies, which are not subject to the EBO ordinance. And what the number is under Exhibit 6. You have the full report. It says FY '23, annual SBE, page 12. And the total spend of exempt contracts during fiscal year '23 was $303,834,570.02, of which SMWBEs accounted for 3.11% of that spend, or $9,443,177.79. The non-SBE payments for those exempt contracts was $391,392.23. That's the exempt category. Those purchases that are not subject to EBO.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Ms. Denise, if you can kind of help us a little bit in regards to the volume. Can we pass a motion to increase the volume?
If the volume doesn't go to a protected class, then I would say that you could. We would prefer to have some input from the expert, but if it doesn't go to a protected class, if that wasn't part of the construction of the ordinance to address a particular disparity, then you could.
Okay, so I guess the motion would be for us to increase the volume subject to.
I think that you guys had it, subject to approval of outside counsel, and there was another change you all wanted to make?
Yes.
And that one, I'm drawing a blank here.
Graduation.
I don't see any.
Graduating businesses.
I think that can be done right away. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think that saying that a business can continue on a current contract seems to be common sense. I don't have a problem with that. If somebody, while we're getting the ordinances done, I don't see any reason to terminate anybody who might otherwise be qualified under the new ordinance. We have clear direction from the board. We're going to amend the ordinance moving forward. We can always do something like make the ordinance retroactive if we need to cover that. But we have clear direction from the board. We know what the board wants to do. It's the board's ordinance. It's the board's contracts. So the board can give us direction, and we will do our very best to implement it.
Madam? Me?
Yes.
The issue is not the graduation, it is counting the participation that is granted to them by way of their certification. It is not the graduating of the business, it is counting. And so that's what's in the ordinance that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
All right, perfect. I see no more lights. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Baxter, you wanted to comment after the motion?
No, something for further discussion. I've had several questions come to me, and I guess it was more of a staff direction, not related to this motion. So I wanted to, without objection from the rest of my board, I'd like for us to have a study done that basically also gives us information back on the policy of the OEBO and how it affects the cost for contracts and the use of dollars. You know, does it affect the cost of our contracts? Does it have a neutral impact? Does it make them less expensive, more expensive for taxpayers in the county? And, you know, I'd like an outside entity to evaluate if this goes, and I think it's the perfect time, unless my board disagrees, because we're also doing another study. So I think information is always key when going forward.
Any objections from the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One of the tenets of the updated study includes the economic impact, which is what Commissioner Baxter is speaking about. And so that you're not interested in the economic impact?
I am always interested in economic impact, which I'm well aware is already in the process. I want to know how this affects the costs of our contracts.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this topic? Commissioner Woodward?
No, I have a separate question. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
I just wanted to ask the survey results that you said you're working on. Can we get copies of the other results, and just as you completed the ones that you've asked the single question for any of our certified businesses that have not received payment from us? I'd just like to see what they've had to say about it. And you said that overall they did not bid or were unaware of opportunities, and just like to know, you know, any of the write-in answers that maybe aren't things we've even considered.
We'll gather that information.
Thank you. And I see no more questions on this topic. Oops, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Just to make sure, I think that what Commissioner Baxter is saying is, as we're doing also the disparity study, is to hire an outside consultant also that is also providing a financial impact of the OEBO program. Is that?
Perfect.
Okay, I think that's, okay.
And do we have any idea how much it might cost to hire another independent consultant? I know we are all striving for more information, and as we give direction, we also need to understand what the fiscal impact is of the direction that we're giving, which would be what is the cost of the consultant. And that was for anything that any of us ask in the future.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I guess what I'm,
Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor, sorry. But I guess the question is, whoever's, I guess if someone's doing the disparity study, are they the same people who can actually do a cost analysis of? So, I think.
Would that be an additional question in the study?
Yeah, that's what, I don't know how to add that, or if it.
The scope of work.
I believe the RFP is already out.
The RFP is out on the street already. Let us look at that, because I'm trying to, and maybe speak with industry, because we're going to need to know what the base is to start with, so we can determine whether there is an additional cost. It's my understanding from CM at Risk, they bid these projects out. There's a competitive process. So whether they're doing it on their own or somebody else is doing it, the bids come in. So we would need to have some premise of, what's included, and we need to get that information from our bidders, primes, et cetera, in order to even determine what that impact would be.
But
So this
isn't-
is a more complicated issue than just saying go out and do it. So I think that maybe we need to sit down with industry so we can make some type of determination on what needs to be done and then report back to this board. And I'm happy to meet with AGC along with the others as well.
That would be great. And if we could work with AGC and
I have no problem
see
doing
where
that.
that falls, I absolutely would like to give that direction. Thank
Okay.
you.
Commissioner Bernard, any more questions? Okay. I do agree. What is the cost of us doing business? What is the cost of us including the small business? Do the small businesses not want to participate with the county is another question that didn't seem to be asked. There are a lot of unknowns about this, and we need to go to the industry experts to do that. So in this instance, I'm not opposed to having the information, and I think we need it for us to make a better decision in the future. So I would appreciate it, and thank you all for the lively discussion on this. It is 11:30. We are done with the OEBO discussion. We will be moving on to the budget and strategic planning cross-departmental team presentations, which there are several. I would like to do a hard stop for lunch, if that is okay with everyone. Yes, okay. So let's do a hard stop for lunch at 12:15. We'll break for 45 minutes, come back at 1 o'clock. So budget and strategic planning, you're up next. Oh, okay, we're going to do an hour for lunch. Thank you. No problem. Oh, wait. Oh, and you know what? How about a 5-minute break for whatever you might need at the moment? right. We still have motion in the back of the room. We are now at the Budget and Strategic Planning Cross-Departmental Team Presentation portion of our meeting. So, Administrator Baker, would you like to kick this off?
I would with much pleasure. This is part of our overall budget process. We start with our strategic planning so that we can provide you information and you give us some direction, and then we go through the budget process. So we're going to start this morning. Keith Clinkscale is our Director of Strategic Planning, along with Marcella Millet. And they both work under the OFMB Director, Sherry Brown. So we want to hopefully have a very engaging dialogue with this, because this is the time that we're going to lay out our strategic plan. Vice Mayor Marino.
It's the other Maria.
One of the directives that you brought to us was to do a survey of our citizens. We did that survey, and Keith that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the survey, lead us right into our strategic goals. We've got current strategic goals we've had for a number of years, and they're broad, but we're able to put everything that I bring to you as a part of the budget cycle into those 6 buckets. And so we want to make sure that that is still the direction this board wants to go. So we're going to start, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clinkscale. You will also hear from our cross-departmental teams. One of my major goals when I took over as the county administrator was to bring down the internal silos. I have accomplished that goal. It also helps with us saving dollars, because we don't have a road torn up, repaved, remilled, and then a year later or 2 years later, we've got to go in to replace underground infrastructure. So our teams are working together. We're making sure that our calendars are crossing and that we can inconvenience our residents once to get projects done. You will hear our outstanding teams and what they've accomplished over the last year. Mr. Clinkscale.
Good morning, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, County Administrator Baker. In November 2018, the Strategic Planning and Performance Management Team held a workshop regarding the county strategic plan. The Board of County Commissioners refined and adopted the 6 strategic priorities for Palm Beach County. Your strategic priorities are, in no particular order, economic development, housing and homelessness, substance use and behavior disorders, infrastructure, public safety, and environmental protection. During this workshop, the Board of County Commissioners also re-engineered the county's mission statement and vision statements. Cross-departmental teams were then created to break down silos. Again, cross-department teams were created to break down silos, which was a result of the SWOT analysis that was done in identifying as silos as the largest weakness within the county. In November 2019, the teams presented their initial goals and strategies to the board and continue to meet, refine the strategies, track performance measures accordingly. A workshop presentation has been given by these teams to the board ever since 2018. Next slide. So why did we engage in this resident opinion survey? The primary objective of the survey is clear: to empower the county to adopt a resident-driven approach to decision-making while fostering community engagement, aligning strategic plans with resident expectations. Essentially, we want to hear the voice of the customer. Our objective was to gain a thorough understanding of the sentiments expressed by our residents with the aim of shaping the course of our community's future, and most importantly, improving the quality of life for every resident. The survey tool was created by county's own Information Systems GIS team based on insights by the board, of County Commissioners, the County Administrator, in conjunction with Strategic Planning and Performance Management. Special thanks to Vice Mayor Marino and County Administrator Baker for their collaboration, guidance, and support of this study. As mentioned, Palm Beach County created a survey questions based on feedback from the Board of County Commissioners. Additionally, Strategic Planning and Performance Management benchmarked other counties and municipalities and researched previously conducted opinion surveys, methodologies, and costs. Some of the research conducted included Hillsborough County, Sarasota County, Monroe County, and the City of Palm Beach Gardens. Strategic Planning and Performance Management collaborated with Palm Beach County's GIS team, who then created a digital version of our resident opinion survey tool to administer to the county. Everything was done in-house. Again, I will say everything was done in-house. A robust and diverse survey awareness campaign included social media posts, which garnered over 10,000 impressions, printed flyers, press releases, water bill inserts, county newsletters, district newsletters, and an email blast of over 100,000 residents. In order to obtain many participant perspectives as possible, the survey tool was created in a digital format and made available in English, Spanish, and Creole. To ensure inclusivity and follow ADA regulations, the survey was made available in alternative formats upon request. Digital and print flyers, such as the one on this slide, were created with links and QR codes to the survey. County departments were instructed to share the digital flyer via email to their customers, partnering agencies, and the community, including Palm Beach State College, Lynn University, FAU, and the Palm Beach County School Board. The message from the county to participants was that we wanted to hear the voice of the residents and obtain information such that their opinions, their needs, their sentiments, and their expectations were being heard. So, a total of 7,529 residents responded throughout Palm Beach County across 7 of your commission districts. Okay, 7,529. In comparison to Hillsborough County, their initial survey garnered 1,400. They did a phone survey. They followed that up because they wanted to get additional, and they actually achieved about 15,000. But that was after a couple iterations. So comparatively, they have about 1.4, 1.5 million residents. Pretty sizable comparison. And we did 7,500 our first time out. Across all 7 of your commission districts, the survey was anonymous with no identifying information such as names and addresses. The only required response in order to submit the survey was the participant's zip code. The zip code was, with the most responses, was 33411. Again, the zip code with the most responses was 33411, which includes West Palm Beach, Royal Palm Beach, Wellington, Golden Lakes, and Westlake, Florida. The second largest zip code response was 33467, where I live, in Lake Worth. The printed responses to the survey and an executive summary were provided to the strategic planning, by the Strategic Planning Performance Management to this board, administration, and all county departments December 21st. December 21st. Since then, in collaboration with the GIS team, an online dashboard of all survey results has been provided and created to categorize the survey on a map by zip codes, commission districts, municipalities, and unincorporated areas. The picture on the right side is a screenshot of that dashboard, which was shared with the board on January 25th, once it was finalized. The dashboard will allow the commissioners to dive deeper into responses to their specific district. You can actually click on a specific respondent, see their demographic makeup, and actually see their responses in your district. The circle on the map indicates the number of surveys in a specific zip code, and the colors indicate the general resident perception of the county in that area based on the survey response. Looking at the demographic makeup of the respondents, the majority of the respondents, 70%, have lived in Palm Beach County for more than 10 years. Gender distribution is predominantly female, 55%. The age range is diverse, with significant representation across various groups, with the largest age range being between 55 and 64. The ethnic racial composition reflects a mix, with white Caucasians at 59, pretty much 60% being the largest group responding. The survey provided the participants with a summary of the 6 strategic priorities of the county. Participants were then asked to rate how well do you think the county is doing in related to each of the 6 strategic priorities. I've highlighted just a few observations. Over 60% agree that Palm Beach County is doing either excellent or good in the area of public safety. Over 44% agree that Palm Beach County is doing either excellent or good in the area of infrastructure. However, almost 71% agree that Palm Beach County is doing either fair or poor in housing and homelessness. Let me say that again. However, 71% agree that Palm Beach County is either doing fair or good in the area of housing and homelessness. We will revisit each strategic priority individually shortly. Participants were asked to rate the quality of life in Palm Beach County on a 5-point scale, including don't know, poor, fair, good, and excellent. The majority of the residents rated the quality of life in Palm Beach County as either good, 44%, or excellent, close to 20%, with close to 25% of the respondents rating the quality of life in Palm Beach County as fair, 24.66%. People love Palm Beach County. Participants were then asked if they would recommend Palm Beach County to others. The number one reason to recommend Palm Beach County, 6,843 respondents said vacation, which explains 9.2 million visitors in 2023. Did I get that right, Emmanuel? The second highest recommendation was to live in Palm Beach County. That says a lot about Palm Beach County. Vacation and to live. We wanted to know if residents felt Palm Beach County is on a continuous improvement path. What we found is that the opinion on continuous improvement is divided, with 37.38% affirming improvement and 38.73% expressing some skepticism. The remainder of the respondents said they just don't know. As I mentioned, you have 6 strategic priorities that were adopted in 2018. Again, the survey tool provided the participants with information about the strategic priorities and then asked them to rank how well the county is addressing each. We already saw a general perspective of the responses a few slides back. We will now view the responses individually. For instance, economic development is perceived positively, with over 71% rating it as excellent, good, or fair. Similarly, 75% of the county is doing excellent, good, or fair in addressing infrastructure needs. When it comes to addressing housing and homelessness, 47% of respondents ranked Palm Beach County as poor, while another 23% said fair. Over 60% ranked the county as excellent and good at addressing public safety concerns. Once again. With regards to environmental protection, 54% of respondents feel that the county ranks excellent or good. Respondents are split concerning how the county ranks at addressing substance use and behavior disorders, with a large percentage, 21%, reporting they just don't know. We asked respondents, is there another or different strategic priority that you would like to have addressed? Respondents are almost evenly split whether or not they would like to see an additional strategic priority or simply don't know. An electronic addendum document captures all the written responses, and there are many, and feedback from residents, which was provided to the board back in December. In order to save you some time, I will walk you through some of the common themes. So there are some benefits to using AI. Over 6,500 participants responded with regarding whether or not there's a need for additional strategic priorities. 6,500 actually responded. Although the responses were split pretty much three ways, there were over 2,000 participants who actually wrote in comments. And I will say, Commissioner Weiss, thank you, because he also used the AI tool and sort of confirmed what our AI tool said as well in terms of some of the themes. By utilizing AR technology, specifically ChatGPT, some common themes were identified. The themes were placed under 12 categories, which you'll see on this slide. Some examples include concerns about the increased cost of living, making it difficult for residents, especially the younger generation, to work and live in Palm Beach County. Complaints about excessive building, overdevelopment, and the impact on wildlife and natural spaces. I read a great deal of the comments, and there was quite a bit on overdevelopment and planning for overdevelopment. Concerns about excessive traffic, reckless driving, and speeding. And calls for creating more affordable housing, revising policies to properly incentivize developers. It is also important to note that some responses were geared toward areas outside of Palm Beach County's government's control, such as education and the school board. But these are all still topics of major concern to our residents nonetheless. The survey provided a list of the top 20 issues for the next 5 years and asked the respondents to rank them. Each participant received a shuffled version of the concerns when filling out the survey. Each concern was then tabulated individually. Results are based on the number selected by participants who ranked that concern as a 1, being the least important, or a 5 as most important. For example, of the 7,310 responses on attainable, affordable, and workforce housing, 57.27% ranked that issue as a 5, most important. In the next slide, you will see charts for each of the 20 top issues. Of note, we should consider concerns that rank a 4 and a 5, which reveals an even greater level of importance to the residents. For instance, as mentioned, over 57% said affordable housing is a 5. 30% says homeless support services is a top priority. Now, just a little bit about these top issues. We came up with these issues looking at several other surveys from other counties and also looking at the top issues that we've had discussions about in Palm Beach County. And we laid out the top 20 and said, okay, rank them from 1 to 5. Is it a least important or is it 5 most important? Again, 30% says homeless support service is a top priority. 36% believe mental health and substance use is a 5, while 36% also believe supporting our aging population is a top issue. 45% believe population growth over development is a 5, while another 22% also rank that as a concern with a 4. Additionally, 29% believe parks and public spaces is of importance. 54% believe water quality is a 5 in terms of importance, while 31% believe beach quality is also a 5. 42% rank fire rescue and emergency services as a 5, which coincides with 54% saying that the community safety is also a 5. 31% said career opportunities ranks as a 5. Culture events had a wider variety of responses, with the majority ranking it as a 3, which could suggest the residents are somewhat satisfied with what we have already offered in the area of cultural events. Could suggest. Regarding tourism, respondents are split. Remember, the number one reason they recommended Palm Beach County is for vacation, and we received over 9.2 million visitors last year. Respondents may feel that we're doing pretty good in this area. So to mark it as a top issue for the next 5 years, maybe that's why they responded this way. Respondents are fairly split on utilities infrastructure, but still feel that is an important topic. 31% believe building for resiliency and climate change is a top issue, while 42% believe road and street flooding issues rank as a 5. Respondents are fairly split regarding planning, building, and code issues. There's also across-the-board split regarding public transportation as a top issue. 50% believe addressing traffic flow on major roads should be a top issue, ranking this as a 5, with another 25% ranking it as a 4. 44% believe property taxes is a major issue, ranked as a 5, with another 20% ranking it as a 4. Like 64%, 5 or 4. Now, questions 16 through 18 of the survey provided open text boxes for residents to write in their response. Again, an electronic addendum document captures all the written responses and feedback from residents, which have been provided to the board. We asked, are there any issues or concerns not listed above that you would like to see? There were 2,160 written responses. We asked, what do you feel Palm Beach County does well? There were 3,166 written responses. If I brought the stacks here, yeah. And then, how do you feel Palm Beach County could do better? There were 3,620 written responses. All that material, all those responses have been provided to you. In order to know if our residents are fully aware of Palm Beach County services, programs, resources, and public information, we asked participants if they are familiar with our website. Almost 50% of respondents are familiar with Palm Beach County's website. When we asked how they heard about the countywide resident opinion survey, a majority of respondents, almost 73%, reported they received the survey through email. I want to thank all the departments for sending it out to all of their distribution lists. So here are your key takeaways about Palm Beach County Resident Opinion Survey. A majority of participants, 71%, have lived in Palm Beach County for over 10 years. A significant portion rates the overall quality of Palm Beach County as good or excellent. The 6 current strategic priorities appear to remain relevant and important to all Palm Beach County residents. Attainable, affordable workforce housing emerges as the most critical concern, with approximately 73% rating it as a 4 or a 5. Traffic flow on major roads and public transportation are significant concerns, indicating a need for enhanced mobility solutions. Other high priority areas include population growth, water quality, community safety, road-related issues, proper incentives for developers, and overdevelopment. So once again, I'd like to give a shout out to Vice Mayor Marino, County Administrator Baker, OFNB Director Sherry Brown. Public Affairs did a phenomenal job getting the word out, and of course our own GIS Manager Regina Hager, who created the tool free of charge. And special thanks to, of course, my right-hand Senior Strategic Planning Analyst, Marcella Millett. We'll try to answer some of your questions.
Commissioner Woodward. First up.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, on slide 7, where we had the residents' responses regarding our strategic priorities, public safety seems to be ranking on the higher with excellent and good, and substance use and behavior disorders more of the fair and poor. As far as how we have these two separated, because in my mind, the public safety and substance use and behavior disorders are kind of intertwined, and public perception is one being that we're doing a very good job, and on the other one, not so much. Can you explain how these two priorities are separate and very much perceived different by the people?
Well, I'll take my crack at it, and I didn't know Ms. Baker also wants to comment. It's interesting. We've had, when we bring up the public safety cross-department team and the substance use team, you'll see some overlap. And we'll definitely see a direct correlation between what's happening in the mental aspect of the county, substance use and behavior disorders, and public safety. There's different perceptions of public safety. The old school perception of public safety is your sheriff's department and fire rescue. And then, so when you talk about mental health and substance use, it takes on a whole different perspective. And for some reason, the two are not converging in terms of thinking of it all as a public safety issue. Ms. Baker, does you want to?
I think he summed that up. When we first started with these strategic goals, they wanted them separate because not everyone that has the behavioral health challenges end up in public safety, in law enforcement. So they wanted it kind of separate. Those two definitely work together, and you'll see that when we do our presentation with the cross-functional team. We're also reaching out to the healthcare district and speaking with them so that we can move forward in a more community-wide approach on this, because the county Palm Beach County government cannot do this all alone. Most of these things are community-wide issues that we must address. The housing is definitely one of them. But when we first started with this, the board agreed they wanted them separate. And so that's how we're accounting for them. And I think they should be, because the behavioral health deals with the, as Keith said, the mental side, as well as drug use, et cetera. And some of them may not necessarily be involved with the law enforcement side of things.
Okay, so as far as how these questions were formed for people to determine public safety versus those, was it a clear explanation for them?
Yes. So what we did is we provided the actual mission of that cross-department team and a description of that cross-department team right here.
What page is that? 12? Page 12?
And this is pretty much what they
Slide
were.
11.
Oh, 11.
Slide 11.
Slide 11.
Okay, so we can discuss this further when we actually talk about each one. All right,
Sure.
thank you.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I actually had a similar question about how we group things together. I almost said lump. But I wanted to know on homelessness and housing, it seems to be, even in the questions, a little misleading. So housing, I think most people are, I guess let me back up with a question. So what do you think are the main attributes that contribute to homelessness?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So much can contribute to homelessness. Evictions, increase in rental costs. We've seen people go homeless because of that. Substance use, mental disorders. We will touch on a great deal of the attributes when we get to the housing and homelessness team, but it's multifaceted. And the stigma of someone that becomes homeless has changed. I mean, we've seen people who were making, $70,000, $80,000, and all of a sudden, within the last couple of years, could possibly be homeless because of the increase in going from $1,200 a month to $2,500 a month.
And to give you, I guess, a little background, I've done some tours in the amazing District 3, Commissioner Barnett's district, and I've done several out in the community. And I have to say, there's even some people that when offered help don't want it, right? And so it leads to more of this mental health component of that. And so why I think a lot of people want us to provide affordable and workforce housing, I would like to kind of see which people are homeless because of the workforce housing and affordable housing issue, and which homelessness instances are because of a mental health or a substance abuse. And most people know this is a little personal with my family background. And I just don't want to keep lumping those two issues together because it is significantly different reasons. So that's where one of my concerns came from. When I did a tour of the old homeless center, now the new housing center has opened up, what a stark difference. And I feel so amazing for those people that are going to now have a first-class housing center available to them. And I attribute that to our staff. So thank you for putting that together, and we were able to do that ribbon cutting. I also, though, want to make sure, and I'll give you, for instance, if you're a single woman and you suddenly become homeless, you're renting a house, and then you get evicted, and now you need a homeless bed for up to 90 days to get back on your feet, so on and so forth. I want to make sure that there's a place for that to occur, but also if we have some mental health problems going on in that same place, I think if you're a single woman, you might be a little afraid to go take advantage of those housing resources. So not all problems fit in one silo. And so when I had mentioned this, because we receive a lot of grant dollars, thank you, state, federal level agencies, to help pay for some of these resources. I wanted more data on who was in. Now, I'm not saying we should stop people with substance abuse and so on. I would like more data so when they're coming in, if we are doing some sort of testing to see if they are on something, we could at least say, hey, we've collected this information over a certain amount of time and justify or say, these are the numbers. What are the next steps to help the mental health aspect of this? So please.
Excellent points. I'm going to put the housing and homelessness team on the hot seat when they come up to address some of this. I will say this. 2018, when we created the cross-department teams, you'd be surprised when they first started to meet, the synergies and the conversations between park and recreations, public safety, community service, youth services, all sitting down at the table. I think 15 to 20 different departments. And we learn from each other, because some of the insights that came from departments opened our eyes as to why people are homeless. Because there was a stigma that you tend to see when you see someone homeless. You have a preconceived notion as to why they're there. But in Palm Beach County, it's changed, and there's a wide spectrum. So you're going to hear some of that from the housing and the homelessness team when they come up as to why people are homeless and why we have to have a multifaceted approach to addressing each need. There's no one size fit all. But I appreciate your question, and I think you'll get some of the answers when that team comes up.
I know, I absolutely appreciate that, and you're making my point. It is so multifaceted, and different reasons. I would just like us to find a way to get that information of where we stand, because right now, without any form of testing, blood, drug testing, however you would like to do that, and even psychiatric evaluation, I think it's a multifaceted thing when they're coming in, that we get to the bottom of the problem, and then once we have that, then we can say, okay, this justifies, what we need to maybe do going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you
Baxter.
for that.
Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. First off, excellent job. First time out, great participation levels. So that's certainly duly noted. And thank you for, I know I gave you a few suggestions on how to help us understand this data, because there was a lot there. Just a couple things for going forward. One is in potentially adding some of our demographic information up against the responses. So for, as an example, we had the question about, you said 71% of the people, I believe, have lived in Palm Beach County 10 years or longer. How does that compare to the total population of Palm Beach County? Is that, and the same thing, and I think when I looked at the ethnic and even gender, it looked pretty close to what I think the county population is, but that would be good to know, I think. And to my colleague, I would think on the homeless and housing, there should be a split between that, because I think they're two different perceptions, but we put them together. So I think if you can, going forward, if we break that out. And then to Commissioner Woodward's comment or question about the substance use and behavior disorders, I thought what was really telling in there is that, over 21% of the people said they didn't know. And that, to me, leads to believe they're probably not actively involved either with anybody who are needing those kinds of services or themselves having, and so that would lead them to not have much of an opinion or not feel like they had an opinion about it. And so I'm not certain, so when you can't put, for me, I don't know exactly what to do with that, other than to know that the people, I'm assuming that the people that are stating that is poor, and so I don't know if we can drill into this. Either it's because of their direct involvement with trying to get access to these services, or is it their perception based on either the media or what they see on the streets and again, what they're seeing on the streets or what they're seeing in media, or is it, just their opinion and without real understanding that they've engaged a service. So it potentially maybe, if you could correlate what their services are, if they're trying to obtain services, or just their opinion of how easy it is or how good these services are, to get a better understanding of their perception.
Yes.
So those are my comments, but I appreciate it and thank you very much.
You're welcome. Commissioner, if I may, very, very, very good points. When we looked at the substance use and behavior disorders responses, and they were sort of like across the board equal, I put myself in, I can only interpret it based on myself. I don't have anyone that's struggling with that area. So for me to put it as a 5, that's the top issue. And I think that's probably, if you didn't have someone in your family that you can relate to that's dealing with that particular, you probably didn't put it as a 5. But then it requires some drilling down, because that's just my perception on how I would interpret those results.
Thank you. Quick comment about housing / homelessness. When you look at economic development and infrastructure, housing is a key component of both of those. So housing seems to be almost in every category. And homelessness, you do keep it with housing, but you also need to have it with substance abuse and behavior disorder. So while we have our 6 pillars, I think there's room in each of those pillars to maybe have a subsection. I don't, but it is important because, as I said, we would love more economic development here, but if we can't house anybody, how can we have economic development? And if we can't move them around transportation-wise, how can we have more economic development? So we really do, I think for us, this is a really good basis, but maybe there are some other subsections we can include. I don't want it to be too unwieldy and too difficult, but as you said, we're doing this cross-departmental. It's almost like it's say that 3 times fast, cross-strategic planning. Commissioner Baxter.
I was just going to add to that. I did find it counterintuitive when looking at the numbers. Everyone seems to want more affordable and workforce housing, but at the same time complaining of infrastructure. One causes the other. You have more housing, you have more cars, you have more people, and I'm sure we'll get to hear that again in a future presentation. But I think it does. To Vice Mayor's point, it does. It all works together. And so the infrastructure has to be a top priority to make sure that the workforce housing and affordable housing makes sense for everyone. Because if you live somewhere and you can't get out, that's a problem. And I hear it consistently. We don't want to look like Broward and Dade County with our traffic and our congestion. I'm sure they're amazing places, but people keep moving north to escape that congestion. And I just don't want to be the next one on there. So I appreciate the comments, and I would really like us to take a very thoughtful approach and prioritizing the infrastructure, because it really leads to everything else that we want to get done. And it is past our hard stop. Thank you.
I was going to say, it is now 12:23. Keith, thank you very much. I know we're going to have more discussion about this when we come back from lunch. So I will actually say let's reconvene at 1:30. So we actually have a little bit more than an hour. And thank you all for being here and waiting so long. And sorry we have to put you off till after lunch, but we're going to get hangry up here. So you don't want that.